What is going on? It's Alex coming back at you with another video, and today we are building an all-pro team just out of 2024 NFL Draft rookies. If you are new, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. You guys know how to use YouTube. Let's get right into this. We're already going to 2025 season, but I want to make sure that we still have a really nice continuation of 2024. We're going to be reviewing every single one of these draft classes because we're going to be looking at all of them with awesome creators. So make sure if you guys have a favorite creator, drop it down below. Helps out the algorithm as well with that beautiful comment. Also, if you are in the mood to be able to get a little bit of cash, maybe be able to earn a little cash, have some money that you just want to have some fun with, use my UnderDog Fantasy code. It's in the description. It's in my link tree. All of my links are in the link tree, so feel free to check that out. Be able to get up to $100 match on your first deposit of $10 or more, and it sends your boy $60 every time you sign up. So much love. Let's get right into this. So this is how it's going to be divided up. I'm going to have a first and a second team of all pro for offense and for defense. Yeah, you can pause the video if you like, but you know, it is what it is. Still going to be much love regardless, but essentially I'm trying to blend. So I usually did this based on my overall grades, and this is still very similar to that. Now, this is going to be based on depth charts from our lads. So, you know, guys who I thought could be guards like Tali Fawaga, I'm not going to be able to put him there because he's listed as a left tackle on our lads, which is a relatively reliable site for depth chart projection. So keep that in mind. But essentially, this is a combination of what I think they're going to do as well as what I value. So, you know, I will have Keon Coleman rated very highly compared to maybe someone like, or for example, Brendan Rice. He's going to be on that next slide. I have him rated very highly, even though he's a 7th round pick. So I still want to show him off because I still think he can make an impact. So this is a little bit of a difference between projection as well as showing off my own personal thoughts. And yeah, there's going to be some players that I really love that aren't exactly the highest overall graded for me, but I love them in your system. So keep that in mind. So starting out, we're going to start out with the quarterback, go skill positions, and talk about offensive line. Caleb Williams, the quarterback. Do I need to explain it? No. I think he's going to be the best, and you know, it is what it is. But let's continue on. Trey Benson. I don't know if he's going to have the highest usage, but he was my number 1 running back in the class. Ended up going to the Cardinals in the 3rd round. And, you know, with injuries potentially happening, because they do every year, and James Conner's not the most reliable in terms of health, I could totally see him getting a pretty good role carved out for himself. He's explosive. He's dynamic. Big fan of his game. Then we go to the receiving core. I'll start out with tight end because that's the one I always forget to talk about. Brock Bowers, you know, he's going to be the main receiving weapon of the tight end group, and he's obviously the best, but he's the main receiving tight end there for the Raiders. Michael Mayer, not exactly going to be the biggest factor in my opinion. So you are going to be getting yourself a good, if not great, receiver out of Brock Bowers, but he also is going to be an elite tight end. Now, looking at the slot, Ladd McConkey is listed as slot according to our lads. Again, remember, all these positions are per our lads' depth charts. Ladd McConkey is fantastic. I think he's going to be dynamic there for the Chargers, and he is my highest graded of the receivers that are designated as slot. And yes, left wide receiver and right wide receiver are specific. I did not just see a boundary wide receiver and put them in the order that I like. There's a lot of receivers listed as right wide receiver, and I have 2 slots for left and 1 slot for right. You know why? Because tight end made it look a little bit more condensed. It was an interesting decision by me, to be honest, but it essentially shows you a wide receiver 1 through 4 rather than having to, you know, flex on where I put the other wide receivers. If I start putting a billion wide receivers on this team, then it's not really a first team all pro. But Ladd McConkey's fantastic. Love him to death. A smooth route runner. You know, I watched him Carson Beck today, and, you know, got to fall in love with Ladd McConkey all over again. Wide receiver wise on the boundary, starting out with the right, we got Malik Neighbors. I don't know how well he's going to perform, but I do know he is the best talent of the right wide receivers in the class, so I'm still going to show him the love of putting him on the first team all pro or all rookie. Then we have the left wide receivers, which I love Keon Coleman. Personality-wise, incredible, but, you know, extremely underrated. People say he couldn't separate, and he never could. Even when people were saying he was a top 15 pick, it's like he wasn't known for being a route running specialist then. He was never a separation specialist then. So I don't know what happened. People just got prospect fatigue, or, you know, maybe came to their senses a little bit, because he was almost a lock top 15, top 10 player. And to me, he was just there around 32 on my board, ends up going at 33. Then you got Marvin Harrison Jr., the obvious leader of the group, going to the Cardinals. So great group right there in terms of the receiving weapons. I think that's fantastic. Probably could have put receiver up on best unit. Don't take that too seriously. But offensive line wise, you got Joe Alt and Tali Fuaga flipping sides. Remember, I used to have Tali Fuaga as a right tackle because he was, or a right guard, and the Saints have him listed as left tackle. So interesting decision, to go Tali Fuaga over Troy Fautanu and, switch Tali from right to left when you had a true left tackle there. But we'll talk about Troy Fautanu in a second. Then we have Isaiah Adams and Jackson Powers Johnson arming the guards. Could have talked about Joe Alt. It's a very similar thing. Joe Alt was a left tackle. He's moving to right. Again, could have thought about, putting... technically, there's actually not that many right tackles remaining except Amarius Mims, who we'll talk about in the next slide. But Joe Alt, of the right tackles actually remaining, is the best one. Fantastic player, just doesn't really bring the power that I'd be looking for, and I'm a little bit worried about that transition. Same thing for Tali Fuaga. But Isaiah Adams and Jackson Powers Johnson are the ones who are arming those guard positions. Jackson Powers Johnson's listed as the right guard. I thought that was a phenomenal pick by the Raiders, so good job on you for snagging him at 44. Isaiah Adams was a third-round pick to the Cardinals, but I'm going to be brutally honest. There's no left guards in this class. Genuinely speaking, there's 3 that are at least considerable for this. It's Isaiah Adams, spoiler alert, Zach Zinter, and then Trevor Keegan. And I almost put Trevor Keegan on that next slide. So, it's a kind of slim pickings. It's obviously going to be the worst unit of the group. Of course, at center, formerly left guard, is Cooper Beebe. I think he's fantastic. He was my interior offensive lineman number 2, and an absolute steal by the Dallas Cowboys there in the 3rd round at pick 73. So, again, that's kind of a little bit of a flavor, a little bit of a tasting of what you're going to be experiencing today. Now we have the second team. I actually have Brendan Rice graded higher than Xavier Worthy, but I think his usage is going to be less. So Xavier Worthy's listed as left wide receiver, not slot. That's why I did that. Same thing with Ricky Pearsall. He's listed as a slot, not a boundary receiver. So again, keep that in mind. But going into the quarterback, again, quarterback, weapons, offensive line. Jaden Daniels, he's the most day one ready. I could have put Drake May in here, but Drake May might not have a very easy first year. I don't know how much I trust Caden Wallace to transition to left tackle when I was very excited for him to just end up being a guard in the short run. It was my dream for him to go to Philadelphia, actually, and then end up going to Stoutland U, but we don't get everything we want, do we? But Jaden Daniels is going to be that day one ready guy. We're going to also pair him up with Ben Sinnott, so I'll skip there really quick. I think Ben Sinnott, he's not someone who I fell in love with during the draft process. I gave it, I think, a D+ or a C-. It wasn't a bad pick. He's still going to be an upgrade, right? I think I gave it a C or a C-. But, Ben Sinnott, he's a talented tight end. I just don't think he's a top 32 tight end in the NFL. So taking one in the 2nd round, I think you should at least be getting somebody who is a top 32 guy. That's my philosophy. I understand people disagree with it, but I still think he's going to be the most used. I would put Theo Johnson there for talent, but Theo Johnson's behind Darren Waller. I don't know if he'll actually get the same opportunities as Ben Sinnott, who's a 2nd round pick and is going to be a focal point of the offense. Jonathan Brooks, traded back, then traded up for by the Panthers. He's going to be, just a very reliable contact balance back with some good vision. Slot receiver, Ricky Pearsall, end of the 1st round. He's a really good wide receiver. I could have probably put some other slots in here, but the talent drop-off was a little too much for me. I do love to show Ricky the love he deserved. Brendan Rice slipped to the 7th round, but not for talent. There was something else going on. We still do not know. If you know, feel free to drop it down in the comment section below. Rome Odunze then arms the right wide receiver position, obviously. It's someone who could end up outperforming Malik Neighbors during the year, but Malik is the number 1 receiving option on his team. Rome Odunze is the 3rd on his. That being said, one is going to be the Bears armed with, Waldron and Williams. The other one is going to be armed with, Dable as well as Daniel Jones. So, you could make your argument there. Then we have the offensive line, starting out with the tackles, Olu Fashanu as well as Amarius Mims. Glad to see that they're not switching positions, because that would make me a little bit concerned about the overall ability of the first team All-Pros. But regardless, Zach Zinter and Christian Haynes are going to be those guards. Again, could have put Trevor Keegan there at that left guard spot, but very slim pickings. Christian Haynes is a great fit for the Seahawks. I love that for them. So, I had my own issues and concerns with Christian Haynes, but when it comes to the Seahawks, I think it's a match made in heaven. Then we have Graham Barton for the Buccaneers. He was my tied 2 center, and I love what he's going to do for the Buccaneers. It was probably my dream spot for him to go. So even though I was lower on him overall, that was a spot that I think he works out very, very well. Some notable backups, guys who definitely were in the consideration. Roger Rosengarten at right tackle for the Ravens. I thought he's a fantastic player. Troy Fautanu and J.C. Latham. J.C. switching from right to left tackle, and Troy Fautanu right behind Olu Fashanu. I mean, again, this is a really, really good offensive tackle class. Brian Thomas as well as Aiden Mitchell were listed as right wide receivers, so I also wanted to throw their names into the mix. I would obviously put them over the 2 left wide receivers, but again, I'm trying to honor the Our Lads board, right? And I'm trying to honor the Our Lads depth chart. So MVP, Jaden Daniels, most used, Ricky Pearsall. Slot receiver is just easy to toss in there if it's not going to be the tight end. And then, of course, if Brandon Rice breaks out, Brandon Rice breaks out. Now, let's talk about the defense. Let's go. I wanted to make sure that I had the full range. So I have left edge and right edge. It was actually originally listed left outside linebacker, right outside linebacker, but not every system uses a 3-4. In fact, not many of them do. But I still wanted to give some credit to the nose tackle. So if that makes any sense, I wanted to be able to get at least something to represent the defenses that, show off a little bit of that defensive interior love, as well as those that have, edges, either 3-4 or 4-3. So feel free to let me know what you think of right edge and left edge. I think it actually makes it so much easier overall for understanding of the graphics, as well as being able to have one-to-one comparisons without having to worry about the defense. Or the defensive system. Regardless, let's go from the defensive line out. We went from the skill positions in on the offense. Let's go from the defensive line to the skill positions then. So starting out with the nose, Devondre Sweat's obviously the only one who's really a nose. There is only really one other nose tackle in this class, and we're going to talk about him next, and it actually blows my freaking mind, but it is what it is. Byron Murphy to the Seahawks, absolutely dominant choice for them. I mean, I love the idea of pairing up with Leonard Williams down there. I mean, that defensive front certainly is bringing a lot of heat. Darius Robinson for the Cardinals is the best defensive end, interior end. And I think that's perfectly fine. About that 280 to 290 range, I think that's a perfect fit for him. Now, looking at the boundary edges, it is, 2 of the first 3 to go. Dallas Turner as well as Jared Verse. I love Leatu Latu. We're going to show him plenty of love on the next slide. I think Jared Verse is a little bit more balanced in terms of his run stuffing ability and his overall power to the game. Dallas Turner, to me, was my number 4 edge rusher, or number 4 player in the class. I think he's fantastic. And the Vikings got themselves a steal. Now, looking at the linebackers, you got Colson and Cooper. They were my top 2 linebackers. They're both listed as inside linebackers. I'm not going to play with them Mike, Will, Sam, etc. Let's just keep it simple and easy for the linebackers. Edward Cooper's actually listed as a Mike for the Packers. I don't know how I feel about that, but, it is what it is. But Junior Colson for the Chargers, absolute steal there at the beginning of the third. Looking at the safeties, because I love the corners. I like to talk about them last. There's not many strong safeties, but Malik Mustafa was my number 4 safety when all was said and done, and he was my number 1 strong. So, obviously, a big addition there. And technically, Cooper DeJean is listed as a nickel back, not as a slot. He's a nickel, and so he's not going to be listed as a strong safety. Again, this is based on Our Lads depth charts. That's why I don't want to mess with the positions. Cole Bishop was listed as a free safety on the Bills, so he was my top safety right there. Again, going to the corners, Cooper DeJean, nickelback. He could also be a boundary as well, but he is listed as a nickel. Big and forceful, great athlete overall. Looking at the boundaries, yes, I'm going to have Andrew Phillips. There's not many left cornerbacks in this class that are notable. It's really Kool-Aid McKinstry and Andrew Phillips as the top guys. And then you could also toss in Max Melton in there. I'm fully, you guys know, Andrew Phillips is my number 9 player overall in the draft. He's my guy. I'm going to show some love for him right here. Terrion Arnold, I did put him over Quinion Mitchell, but, again, you could do that if you'd like. It doesn't even matter. Who cares? I love Terry Arnold. He's my number 3 player in the class. Of course, I'm going to put him there. Both of those guys are right corners. Of course, in the perfect situation, I'd move Andrew Phillips to slot, and I'd put Quinion Mitchell at the other side. But again, I'm sticking to our lads' depth charts. So regardless, Malik Mustafa is my guy who's going to be the sleeper. The Niners got themselves another absolute steal at safety. And, power to him, man. Power to him. Byron Murphy, I feel like is going to be the one who's the most consistently disruptive, but that's why we end off going there. So good job overall by this draft class for producing some really good players. It's pretty obvious, though, to see where the inefficiency lie. It's in those inner 5, the nose tackle, the linebackers, and the safeties. Then we got the defensive second team. So, yeah, I'm going to get flamed for Leatu Latu being here. He's the second best left edge to me. That's not a big issue, in my opinion. He's a really damn good player. I love him a lot. He was like 1 or 2 points away from beating Jared Verse, and it's just because he's not as good of a run defender. So keep that in mind. He's going to be a great Colt. I think it was a great pick. I gave it a B at the time because I was like, I don't know like if edge was like the right move because I had Dallas Turner above him. Who gives a shit? I mean, at the end of the day, I was a big fan. Your first 2 picks, like when I looked back on them after getting AD Mitchell, I'm like, that's an A+ draft. That's an A+ start. So you guys did a fantastic job. I love Leatu Latu. These random tweets where I'm shouting out the edge rushers that just got drafted. I don't know why they're going better than the ones that I kind of wish would go big, but it is what it is. Marshawn Nealon, the right edge for the Dallas Cowboys, friend of the show. He ended up being my number 4 edge rusher in the class. We actually might be able to get an in-person video with Marshawn Nealon when he comes here to Dallas because we've already talked about it. So sounds like a pretty cool idea. Johnny Newton is the defensive tackle number 2, as he was the whole time for me. I wanted to make sure, again, I gave credit to the guys who are listed as DNs as well as the ones who are listed as D tackles. Johnny Newton would be, on the first team as D end if I had, if I didn't care too much about the being precise with it being listed as a D tackle versus a D end. But Braden Fisk by the Rams, there wasn't very many other defensive ends that I liked. And again, this is going to be a 3-4 defensive end. Then at nose, somehow, some way, who the hell? I mean, you guys know that I was heated about the Falcons draft. Overall, the whole thing, the whole shebang. And yeah, they got a couple good players in there. Braylon Trice, Brandon Dorlus, awesome. Rukaroro is a good player. You're going to stick a 200 and like a sub 300 pound man at freaking nose tackle? Are you serious? Like, what? I genuinely believe that you should fire the GM right now. If that is true, because again, our lads is not 100% correct, right? I'm doing this because it's fun to be able to incorporate the modern depth chart with, what this is. If that is true, I would fire his ass right now because that's a misutilization of really good assets. You're going to guarantee Rukaroro is a freaking bust. Put a sub 300 pound man at nose tackle. Like, that is a fireable offense. So I'm hoping that's wrong. I'm hoping it is. But if it's not, you got to be kidding me. So, continuing on, Peyton Wilson for the Steelers. He was right behind in my linebacker rankings. I had a pretty solidified top 4 and a massive drop-off after, so it was really easy for me to go after my top 4 linebackers. However, I would love to introduce Tyrese Knight to the conversation for the Seahawks. The dude's a walking highlight reel. It's just his processing the game is really hit or miss, and I think he'll need a little bit of time there. He's listed as part of the notable backups there for this group, but he plays for the Seahawks. So, looking at the safeties, Tyler Nubin, I was a little bit lower on him than a lot of people. I'll call myself out on that. But he still was my second best strong safety. So it's not bad. It's just, wasn't a huge guy on Tyler Nubin. Then you got Kalen Bullock for the Texans. This was one where I took a little creative liberty in showing off my board rather than, who I think is going to perform the best at free safety this year. Big fan of Caleb Bullock. I was a big fan of that pick there in the 3rd round. Now, looking at those DBs, we got Ennis Rakestraw in the slot. He is listed as a slot/nickel. He's number 2 to Brian Branch, but they drafted him in the 2nd round. He's obviously not going to be sticking in just that spot, so I'm excited to see where he's going to play during this year. As y'all know, he was my corner 4 in the draft. Now, looking at that right corner, Quinion Mitchell. He's graded higher than Andrew Phillips, so don't even try to give me shit for having Andrew Phillips over him. It's a right cornerback. I just had Terrion Arnold graded higher for different reasons. They're different players. You cannot compare him one-to-one, in my opinion. It really is scheme-specific. But regardless, Quinyon Mitchell is an amazing player. He was my number 7 player in the class. So the fact that he's on a second team, it's pretty obvious I'm going to put edge and defensive back who have, like, I think these guys are the edges as well as Quinyon Mitchell are 3 of my top 15 players in the draft as part of second team. So keep that in mind. But, Kool-Aid McKinstry, an absolute steal by the Saints, just fell because of that Jones fracture in his foot. Overall, this team is fantastic. But other names of note, Braylon Trice, if he ends up being, the best version of himself, which was 275 pounds, elite handwork, like just knowing how to get good leverage, he's going to do very, very well. Max Melton, again, he's like somebody who's an absolute dog. It's just such a short and small corner core there in Arizona. I do worry. Renardo Green was one of my guys. I really loved his game overall. Niners got to get him at the end of the second. Not a bad potential player to be. If he starts getting some nice picks, could end up, accelerating into being more productive than the rest of these guys. Then you got, of course, Tyrese Knight, which I already explained. And then my super duper dark horse, which is Xavier Thomas. He's right outside linebacker number 3 on the Cardinals right now, but he was one of my favorite players coming into the draft. But I think Latu just is a sack machine. He'd end up being the MVP if all is said and done. Tommy Eichenberg is just the most consistent player probably on the board. And then Ennis Rakestraw, if he can end up carving himself out a role. This guy, I continue watching Missouri games because that's the secondary I want to watch when I'm watching how quarterbacks and receivers go up against him. He is so phenomenal. So that's going to be the video. It was just kind of a fun idea to break down, and at least put a spin on it, because now it's not pre-draft, it's post-draft. So I love that to death. Super exciting for me overall. And I hope you loved it as well. Thank you so much for watching, showing the love that you always do. See you on the far side. Peace.